Hey, boys and girls. All right. We are new podcast episode of Before so, uh, Survivor's Guilt. All right. Hello, boys and girls. This is my first time going live. Let me turn everything else on. Boom, ba, boom, boom. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, ba, ba. Switch folders. Folder. All right, folder number 2. Oh man, here we go. Here we go. All right, and then we click record. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Before You Kill Yourself. This is episode number 9. Before we get started, we always want to start off with the 1-800 suicide number. If you are thinking about it, have thought about it, I always want to emphasize, do not just call the number when you're thinking about it or when you just feel like you've run out of hope. Call the number even if you've thought about it before. Like if you thought about it a week ago or a month ago or even a year ago, I think it's always good to just, if you haven't been to therapy, if you haven't talked about it with anybody else, it's always good to call the number and just process it. Just to have someone to process it with, to talk it through with, because if you thought about it before, chances are you're going to think about it again, and maybe the next time you think about it, you won't have the strength or willpower, or I mean, willpower is not the word, but you may not have the presence of mind or the ability to not take your own life the next time. So call 1-800-SUICIDE if you've thought about it or thinking about it, or if you know someone else who's talking about it and you don't know how to talk to them about it, right? That's also I also love to emphasize that is that if there's someone in your life who is struggling with suicidal ideation and you're unsure of how to talk to them, then call the number 1-800-SUICIDE. And always link in the show notes a million other numbers for people who are dealing, whether it's a veteran, whether it's your child, whether it's a gender issue, whatever it is, there's a phone number that, whether they're a teenager, there are multiple phone numbers for you to call. Today, we're going to be talking about survivor's guilt. Survivor's guilt, and why that could lead so many people to take their own life, to complete suicide, especially if they're veterans or somebody who's survived something like the Holocaust or some type of war, or even a major violent act like mass shootings. There's survivor guilt with that. There's even survivor's guilt with people who make it out the hood, because I feel that a little bit of like, why am I the one who made it out and not so many other people who were also deserving? Why did they lose their life? So there's survivor's guilt with that. There's survivor's guilt was if your parent died giving birth to you, or someone died saving your life, you may have survivor's guilt. So a lot of people experience survivor's guilt for so many different reasons. But before we get into all that, I'm gonna share something with you about like why this came up for me recently, talking about survivor's guilt. I'm here in wonderful, and we're going to talk about tips and strategies on how to overcome or how to manage survivor's guilt in a second. But what got me to thinking about that and why that's the topic for today's podcast is I'm here in Reno, beautiful, not Reno, Las Vegas, performing at the Comedy Cellar with an incredible cast of comedians, Keith Robinson and Will Savant. Who else is there? Mark Cohen. And when I come to Vegas, it's so important for me because we're here Wednesday through Sunday to take care of myself. And I go into the spa, and as I'm sitting there in the sauna, this gentleman walks in and we start talking, and he's currently in the military. So obviously I can't share his name, but he starts to tell me his story about we got into a conversation about PTSD and dealing with it, and his story is remarkable, and I think it's something that's powerful that can definitely help you listeners out there, even if you're not a veteran, even if you're not a vet, if you've never been in war or anything like that, because his coping strategies, the way he's had to cope with what he's experienced is something or things in ways that you also can utilize no matter what your background is, if you've considered suicide. So what he was telling me is that in the military, they and he's in the Air Force, what they have is like, as you come in, there's an opportunity for the enlistees to sign up as a preemptive strike, to sign up for a program, and I forget the name of the program, where you can have two people that you can call if you feel like taking your own life. And he said what was interesting is that a lot of people they don't sign up for it because for different reasons, but I'm sure a part of it is, you're young and you think that you're tough enough and strong enough, and that, that's something that you won't be affected by. But it also could be that you think that there's also the shame of, if you grew up in a household where it was scary for you to talk about your emotions or your feelings, or people made you feel less than because you expressed some type of depression or sadness, then, this to you would definitely not feel like an option. You'd be too scared or ashamed to use this. But he signed up for it. And even though at the time he didn't have any issues with it, he signed up for it. And even though he signed up for it, he said it saved his life it saved his life a million times over, because there were so many times where he was experiencing PTSD and trauma and things of that nature, that because he had somebody he can call and knew that he could call and knew that they would take his call and it was already set up, it really helped him talk through his feelings and emotions. And I bring that up because it confirms the importance of talking through your feelings, of calling someone, of talking to someone, of knowing that someone will listen to you, accept how you feel, and validate your emotions. It's super important that you have a person, or maybe you journal, or a therapist, or whether it's online or in person, or a family or friend that you can reach out to. And you set this up in advance. Set it up in advance. Say, listen, I'm going through some stuff right now. I'd love to be able to call you when I'm feeling a certain way. Would you be willing to listen and accept my call and talk me through how I'm feeling? And if you set that up, and sometimes you might have to switch the person up, because that is a lot emotionally for a person to handle. But you can set that up, and then for sure that when you're feeling a certain way, you have this person you can call, or this group, or and so on top of that, he also mentioned, because we're talking about his coping strategies, which I thought was really fascinating. And here's what's really fascinating about his story. Even though he never entered combat, and I read this about a lot of vets, it's the ones who aren't who don't engage in direct contact or action that have most of the survivor's guilt because they were never actually in combat, and then they're seeing all their friends and um, all their comrades being shipped back and in caskets, and here they are never having engaged in combat. So there's a lot of guilt from why do they have to go to war and I don't? Why can't I be involved in that? And so there's a lot of guilt with that. And so he said that there, where he was stationed, the bombs would come in, and um, and you would know because it was too quiet. This is what really fascinated me about the PTSD part of this. He said when it was too quiet, that's when he knew that there was some type of bomb or missile incoming. He said when there was noise, that meant that, it usually was trucks going by. It was really loud where he was. And so when it was loud and it was noisy, he felt comfortable. When it was quiet, he knew he had to hit the deck. So then when he came home to America, to California, and things are quiet, it drove him nuts. He went mad. And finally, he went to a therapist, and his therapist had the best solution. His therapist said, move somewhere where there's noise. So he got an apartment next to a train station because the loud noise of the train made him feel safe. And it's fascinating. And he said he lived there for a few years, and he said it saved his life to live somewhere with a lot of noise. And what's interesting is, I'm from Chicago, and where I lived in the middle of the city. A lot of sirens, noise, action. There's pimps, gangs. There's also a university. I grew up by Loyola University. But the point is, there was a lot of everything and movement and noise and stimulation. And then I remember when I got recruited to play at Ball State, and I stayed with a friend who lived in the suburbs of Chicago. And the suburbs are super quiet. And that first night, I remember when I cut the light out, not only is it quiet, it is dark because they don't have a lot of street lights. It's way out there in the suburbs. I was used to the street light coming in from the street, obviously through my window. And so I always had that light. But here in the suburbs, it was pitch black. And I was terrified. I had never slept. That was my first time I realized I'd never slept in pitch blackness. And I was going nuts. I couldn't sleep. Everything terrified me. Sounds and noises were amplified 10x. And so, and not to compare that to what this military person went through, but I understand that if you're used to a certain environment and then you step out of it, you're kind of on edge and you don't feel completely comfortable. So it was fortunate that this military personnel that I talked to, his Air Forceman, was able to change his environment and move somewhere that could help him deal with his PTSD, his survivor's guilt. Beautiful thing. So for those of you out there listening, and that's why, we've always talked about the importance of your environment. And sometimes a peaceful environment, a quiet, serene, and tranquil environment may not be serene and tranquil and peaceful for you. It may amplify the noise in your head. So if you need to move next to a football stadium or the train tracks or industrial area or the city, whatever that is, then do that. If you're struggling with too much noise or too little noise. But what else there was something else that we had talked about, because I was just like, oh my God. So then I asked him about his daily routine, because even as he was telling me this story, he broke down in tears because he had to take photographs of the military servicemen who either had died in combat or had completed suicide. And he said, you're taking these photos, and then you're alive, and it just it made it challenging for him in terms of why does he get to survive. And so now that he's back here, he's still in the service, he's still enlisted. I asked him, like, what is he doing daily to manage his emotions, to cope with to deal with the PTSD. And he said every morning he has to wake up and exercise. He does cardio for about an hour, which is funny because in the 2 days I've been here, I've seen him both. I've seen him both days in the morning, doing his workout, and then we usually end up in the sauna at the same time. So he does that, and then he goes to work, and then after work he'll work out again, or talk to his girlfriend, and then do a little bit more work, and then go to bed. So he's working out twice. He has a daily routine. He said, being able to call his family and talk to his girlfriend, that really helped and encouraged him, and helping him manage his PTSD. All right. So what? No. Oh, so here's also what was interesting. I'm checking out my notes. Is that I asked him if he was taking any meds, and he said, and I didn't realize this, that when you're offered meds in the military, because you are you don't know when you're going to be able to come back to base. Sometimes, like you're out in the middle of nowhere for months. So the doctors will give you a bag load of pills and meds to help you get through those months. So you're supposed to obviously take one a day or maybe twice a day. But what ends up happening is a lot of these guys will end up, taking 5 or 10 at a time, and so then they get addicted and they run out of the pills, and so that's why you have such a prevalence of drug addiction with military vets, is because they've kind of developed that habit in service. The other thing that happens is, he said, you always have the option in terms of painkillers and meds of getting smaller doses, but then that means you have to take more of the pills, or they give you a pill with an extremely high dose, like an 800 milligram or 1,000 milligram pill. And he said he would often opt for the 800 milligram pill because he didn't want to be seen as taking a lot of pills. So he preferred to take a higher dosage versus a smaller dosage, because he didn't want to be seen taking a lot of pills. So I thought that was an interesting thing also, in terms of how complex the issue of drug addiction is with our military vets. So now I want to get into how to survive survivor's guilt, right? Because a lot of people have it, like I said, for different reasons. And before I get into that, I also want to mention, like I said, I do stand up, and I always mention my podcast during my shows, because there's always somebody, obviously, in the audience who's either dealing with suicidal ideation or knows someone who's dealing with suicidal ideation. So I did a show last night, and after the show, 2 military service people came up to me and told me about this app. It's an app called Objective Zero. And I've already looked at the app, and they were like, you have to promote it on your podcast. And so that's what I'm doing now. It's an amazing app that allows military vets and people in the military to connect with what they call ambassadors. And you can find these ambassadors. It's almost like a social media app for vets who are basically, hold up, let me read here's their vision. The Objective Zero Foundation contributes to efforts that prevents veteran suicide. We accomplish this by enhancing social connectedness and access to suicide prevention resources. A mission-driven tech startup, Objective Zero, seeks to connect every veteran in America to suicide prevention support and resources. And then they go on to list their values: selfless service, loyalty, integrity, and community, transparency, innovation, and confidentiality. Once again, the name of the app is Objective Zero, and it's like a social media app for veterans where you can find what they call ambassadors. And ambassadors, to me, the way I understand it, is that they're basically like sponsors in AA. And these are people that you can connect with who are either close in your proximity or in different parts of the country or world. And you can select them, and you can select them based on the military background, age, location, things of that sort. And you yourself can become an ambassador if you are or were a part of the military. And so it's a really great app. It links to what you can do with this app is you can either text, video, or voice call an ambassador, which I think is really cool. And it also links to events, quotes, inspirations, and podcasts that you can listen to that they have already vetted as being appropriate for military vets who are struggling with suicide ideation. And it also links to veteran resources. So any type of resource that you may require, Objective Zero links to all that. And it also has a link for the Veteran Crisis Hotline. So Objective Zero, please check it out. And now let's get into the 6 tips on how to survive survivor's guilt, okay? Because a lot of people who have survivor's guilt, they have guilt obviously about surviving. And that makes sense because you're like, why me? Why do I get to live? Why do I get to thrive? And that person lost their life, or that person is in jail, or that person is injured or didn't make it. And you also start to think about like what you should have done. You know, if you survived a war or you survived out the hood, you often think about like how you could have done things better, how you could have saved that person's life. And so there's that, there's guilt, there's remorse, there's regret, there's an entire host of feelings coming into play. And you may even feel guilty over what you did because maybe you caused the accident. Maybe you caused the death in some way. You fell asleep on a job. You read the coordinates wrong. You went left when you should have went right. Whatever it is, you may feel guilt over something that you did that caused a death or injury to someone you know or in your circle. The first tip on dealing with survivor's guilt is ask yourself, who is truly responsible, right? Because we're at war. You're in war, and when you're at right, you didn't start the war. You didn't cause the war. You're not behind the war. Who is truly responsible for the death or the life of someone? Even if you're not in war, it's like when I think about I have survivors guilt, like I said, about making it out the hood. I'm like, why didn't they? But it's like I'm not responsible for all the people who didn't make it out. There's a system in place that operates a certain way, and there's the law of averages, and not everybody can make it out like that. Life just doesn't work like that, right? What governments are responsible? There are governments responsible for what's happened. There are countries responsible. There are companies responsible for what's happened. So that doesn't mean that we don't take responsibility for our part if we did have a part, but let's zoom out and let's make sure we're spreading the responsibility evenly and throughout everyone, and holding everyone accountable so that we're not walking around like it's only me, like we can't save everyone, right? We do our best. We show up, we do our job, and we do our best. But let's be honest about everyone and all the entities involved in why this event happened, right? I mean, even when I look at people who survived 9/11, and you hear there's a lot of survivors' guilt with that or with the Holocaust. There's so many layers of responsibility with why that happened, how that happened, and what happened that uh, it, we can't take on the responsibility all by ourselves. And that doesn't mean that you don't feel responsible, but like I said, let's zoom out and let's spread it around a bit, right? Instead of inflating our personal responsibility with that. The second tip is remind yourself you can handle sadness and loss. And this is all coming from Psychology Today, right? That's what I'm looking at right now. Remind yourself you can handle sadness and loss because we've experienced, I'm 42 years old. I've experienced a lot of loss and sadness, and it's a part of life. I've lost some of my physical ability. I've had six bulging discs in my neck, and so I have some numbness on my left side, and my meniscus is torn. So there's a sense of physical loss. Relationships, you get to 42, there's a lot of love and loss that have happened throughout my lifetime, and opportunities and so on and so forth. So we've experienced loss before and sadness before. And I lost my father, a few years ago. So we've been there, so that means that we know how to handle it, and we can handle it, and that we have the strength and fortitude. Um, but the key thing, we have to remind ourselves, like, it's not unsafe or bad to experience intense emotion. Like, we can work through feelings in any way that suits us. It doesn't have to be it's not a one size fits all. Any way is okay, whether quiet or loud, sadness and pain are not felt in one singular way. The best way is to let yourself feel what works for you, right? Number three is think about how people who love you feel about your survival. That's super important, because I forget sometimes, like, if I think about it through my sister's eyes, how grateful she is that I'm still here. If you look at it through your family members' eyes, your friends' eyes, your people in your community, your teachers, like, think about all the people who are so grateful that you are still here. Think about all the things that you're now able to do, the lives that you're able to affect, the people you're able to help, the communities you're able to serve because you are still here, right? So think about, you think about your mom and how grateful your dad or anybody. There has to be, maybe your dog. Think about the people in your life who are so happy that you are here. Maybe it's just your cashier. You may have no idea how much you coming into the store every day lights up a person's day, or how much they look forward to seeing you. And sometimes, and that's the thing, is that we don't always tell the people that we love them, or we don't always tell the people in our lives how much they give our life meaning or purpose. There's a guy, I stay at this, like I said, I'm staying at the Rio Hotel, and it's not the best hotel, but this guy Joey, who works in the spa, this dude is so amazing that I don't want to go to any other hotel. Like I look forward to coming back to this hotel just because Joey is so funny, and I love talking to this guy. And I've never said that, but but it's clear from our interactions and our back and forth that we enjoy each other's company, and that's what I think about. I think about the Rio. I think about the quality of sleep that I'm gonna get, and I also think about my boy Joey, and he just has these crazy stories. He's married today, has like a Filipino wife, and he's just nuts in the things that he's been through. He's like beat cancer twice, but he's just always smiling and always a great story. And he just like has this zest and energy for life. And he's like, I don't know, 50, 55. And, he's just one of those guys who has absolutely no filter when he talks. And I love being around people like that because I'm so filtered. And so when I get a chance to be around someone who's just completely off the chain, I love it. So number 3 is think about how many people who love you feel about your survival. The fourth tip on survivor's guilt is remember, it's not a zero-sum game, right? Hidden beneath survivor guilt is the idea that there's only so much luck to go around, and that benefiting from good fortune means that someone else is being deprived of it. But remember, luck is random. It is so random. Even when you listen to billionaires, I listen to Warren Buffett. I don't think Jay-Z's a billionaire, but he's pretty close. Maybe him and Beyonce together are billionaires. But they'll tell you that luck is involved in their success. And even LeBron James, anybody who's super successful, Elon Musk will tell you, it's all a numbers game. Life is like just the fact that just the fact that you were born, you didn't have control over that. That is a numbers game. You being born and you being born the way you were. Remember, there's like a million sperm rushing to the egg, and your sperm made it to the egg, which made you. If a different sperm had made it, it would have created a different you. So don't forget, it's not a zero-sum game. There is luck involved in who survives and who doesn't. You watch these movies, and the main guy, The Rock, always survives. But in real life, he's not always going to survive. He's, the flood, the tsunamis, Godzilla. What was it, Godzilla? Or I forgot what the last movie was with the not, what was it, an ape? It was some type of ape. But why can't I? That's going to eat me up. Anyway, but, there's luck involved. It's a numbers game. Even my buddies who go out and meet women and pick up women, they'll be like, yo, it's just numbers, man. You talk to 10 women, one of them going to say yeah and give you their number. So number 5, let's move on to number 5. Do something meaningful for someone else. I use this all the time. Anytime, not anytime, but what makes me feel really good when I'm feeling survivor's guilt or unworthy of being here, I spread love. And I do it in different ways. Sometimes I get on social media and I will like leave really positive comments on, people's feed. Excuse me. And you think that that's a ridiculous thing or something that doesn't really work. But truthfully, when you get on other people's, when you leave positive comments and you're like, man, that's amazing. That's excellent. Oh, great work. It actually makes you feel better because, in your heart, you're making someone else feel better. Or if you share, stories or donate or volunteer, or just, crank out the old gratitude list, write down 5 things you're grateful for, call someone and just tell them how much they mean to you. Write someone a letter and let them know how much you care about them. We don't do that, and like I said, this goes back to not just family and friends, because a lot of people are lonely and don't have family or friends. But everyone has this peripheral players in your life, meaning like the mailbox or the post office person, the cashiers at your grocery store, your landlord, the person who maybe somebody walks your dog or mows your lawn, or there are places that you go every day or a lot of times, or the person at the coffee shop that you go to, that you have these quick interactions with. Hi, bye, how's your day, the weather's this, oh, great game last night, blah blah blah. And but they're a part of your life. And if you took the time to just be like, man, just write that person a letter and just be like, thank you for opening the store. I get this and that every day, and I'm so grateful that you have the hours that you have, and it's really close to my home, and you always have a great energy, and whatever, and just share a little bit about yourself, and then you'll find that as you go in, they'll share more about themselves, and then you have this relationship with that person, and then maybe that person then introduces you to other people. So there's so many ways for you to expand your network of people by just showing some gratitude and some love and some appreciation for the people who are already in your life. If you have a social worker, your sponsor in AA, if you're going down to the veterans office, those people at the people who work in office buildings, they're so unappreciated. If we took the time to appreciate the people who are quote unquote just doing the paperwork or just setting the appointments, or the front desk clerk or the secretary, those people, show them some love. You'd be amazed at how much it is going to make your life better, because there's so many things people can do for you that you're not aware of outside of what their job is. We tend to just see people in their jobs, and like as if like that's all they do and that's all they're capable of. But when I talk to people, whether it's a secretary or whatever, they usually have such a rich life. And then you go, oh my God, like I really love this person. I really want to connect with this person. I was we're at a hotel. We're at the Four Seasons Hotel yesterday for lunch, and I first of all, I didn't pay for it, because I don't want you to think that I'm balling over here. My buddy paid for it, and but it was four of us, and walking out, my buddy was wearing these jeans, and the door guy looked at my buddy's like, "Are those such and such jeans?" And my buddy was like, "Yeah." And the guy knew the make, the model, the year it was released, all that. The year it was released, like his album, but all that stuff. And they started bonding over the jeans, because apparently not everybody wears these jeans. They're very expensive jeans. But the point is, he was like, I would have never guessed that the door guy was into jeans, and the door guy had like 70 pairs of those jeans. But it was just, it was just like some old Indian dude who you didn't think was really into fashion. So do something. When you do something meaningful for other people in your life, or for your community, or you give back, you'd be surprised at the love that you get back and the appreciation that you get back, and how much you'll start to feel connected. And then it'll start to give the fact that you survived meaning, right? It'll give you a sense of, oh, this is why I'm here still, because there's more work to be done. And you can do that work on the behalf of the people who passed away, And number 6, last but not least, this goes without saying, take care of yourself. Get some sleep. I was just, when I was in a sauna today, there was this guy, he came in, he was super ripped. And when I see people who are, quote unquote, better than me, or thriving in an area that I want to thrive, I ask them questions. I'm a 9-year-old. I'm like, hey man, you're in great shape. What do you do? How do you sleep? What do you eat? Or how often, how fast do you eat? What time do you eat? How much light? Blah, 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 blah. And he said sleep is super important in terms of taking care of yourself. And what he does is, he said, at night, he goes, it's very important to cut off the overhead lights and, either turn on a lamp or light some candles. You want some nice mood, softer lighting at night. Overhead light kind of mimics the sun, and so it tricks your brain into thinking you're more awake than you are. So you definitely want candles. You want soft lighting at night. The other thing that he does is he takes magnesium glycinate, and magnesium, and I've talked about this before. You can get that in dark leafy greens, but most people don't eat enough dark leafy greens. So you could take it in pill form. That's what he does. He takes it in pill form, and it just helps to trigger the melatonin in your body and gets you into a deep sleep. So if you're not eating enough dark leafy greens, take magnesium glycinate, which is, like I said, I don't take it, but I do have it as a powder supplement. But the reason why I don't take it is because I do eat a lot of dark leafy greens. And then the third thing he said is that, because here's my issue, I late night snack, and I go through cycles where I don't, and I'm very quote unquote good. But lately I think, the holidays, my schedule's been a little wonky. And then the shows at night everything is just thrown off. And he said that, he eats in an 8-hour window, one, and that his last meal is about 7, and he eats a huge dinner. And I said, what do you mean huge dinner? How do you define that? He said, lots of protein, but lots of vegetables. And the thing is that so many people are trying to eat less. And I was at lunch yesterday, and this lady was eating a salad, and, I was eating salmon, and everybody associates salad with eating healthy. But the truth is, salads don't really fill you up. It doesn't do anything. It's better that you eat vegetables, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, bell peppers, things that really are rich in flavor and nutrient dense. It's good to have salad mixed in with your stuff, but it doesn't really move the needle. It doesn't fill you up, and you're going to end up snacking pretty soon. So it's better to get the vitamins and minerals from vegetables versus your kale. And if you're going to have kale and spinach, put that in a, blend it up as a juice or something like that, or have that as a salad for lunch. But for dinner, definitely, if you have late night, and this is just a strategy for people who struggle with late night carb cravings, just have a bigger dinner, but make sure your dinner is protein dense with the healthy, meats of chicken breast, excuse me, fish, turkey, and then a lot of vegetables. And also have your carbs, but have it be complex carbs like sweet potatoes. Have your sweet potatoes, man. I love sweet potatoes. Don't be skimping on the sweet potatoes, bro. So make sure you're sleeping, moving your body, get yourself in a support group to take care of yourself. Join us, even if you think, I don't really want to do this. I don't think support groups work. Find out. See what happens when you just keep showing up to the support group. You'd be surprised at how helpful it is, and how much you'll be able to thrive being in a support group. All right. So that's it for today's podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Before you kill yourself, make sure you comment. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora. So rate it, comment, share, like, all that good stuff. My name is Leo Flowers. Thank you guys for tuning in. And Happy New Year. Today is what, the 30th. Today's the 30th. Happy New Year coming up. This is so I released the episodes on Monday and Thursday. So Happy New Year. And let's have a fun. Let's have an engaged, let's have an aware 2019, boys and girls. Adios. Do, 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 do.